Maryland basketball has one of the best starting fives in the entire country.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at Inside Black and Gold. So make sure you guys head over to insideblackandgold.net for all your latest Terps news. Today, we are going to be talking about Maryland starting five. I think they have a top five starting five in the entire country, and I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what it means for Maryland basketball this year, and just kind of how exciting this starting five is. And I don't remember a group, Maryland starting five, that has been this good. It's been a really long time, and we've had some good ones. There's been some good ones under Mark Turgeon, and there's been some good ones over the year. But I don't remember one that is quite this powerful, where we just have five guys that really can give you 25 any single night. And that's what sets you up for success later on in the tournament, sets you up when you're playing in March, is having a starting five like this. Of course, it's Gillespie at the one, Rodney Rice at the two, Selton Miguel, and then Derek Queen and Julian Reese down low. And a lot of people came into the year question, is this lineup going to work? Can Derek Queen and Julian Reese play together? Is there enough shot making? Is there enough of talent in terms of Maryland brings in a lot of guys from the portal? Are those guys going to translate to Big Ten ball? Remember, every single one of our guards brought in from the portal. And first of all, we have to give credit to Kevin Willard for building a really solid roster, for building, I honestly think, one of the best, like I said, one of the best starting fives in the entire country. We got to give credit to Kevin Willard, because I feel like we kind of don't talk about it enough. He went from having one of the worst rosters last year in the Big Ten, horrible rosters, depleted, to losing a lot of guys, and it looked like things could get bleak. It looked like Julian Reese could enter the portal. Jameer Young was off to the NBA, and he's doing his thing now in the G League. Dante Scott was going to be gone. Things weren't looking good for Maryland basketball. Kaiser transferred, Jonathan Lamoth transferred. That was our kind of young core. And now we look at Maryland basketball, and we look at the starting five this year and say, wow, what a jump it made. So I just want to start by saying we got to give credit to Kevin Willard, because you don't normally have a roster jump like Maryland did. You don't usually go from one of the worst starting fives in just the Big Ten to maybe one of the best starting fives, not only in the Big Ten, but in the entire country. That's a roster jump that just doesn't happen. That's something that is really rare, I think. It can happen in college basketball for sure. You definitely can go from being bad to really good. But this Maryland starting five is something different. And we look at the stats and we look at the averages. It says it's one of the best units in the country. When you look at it, the starting five averages 69.8 points per game. If you want to round up and say 70 points per game, if that's easier for your brain, you could say that. But that's the highest of any starting unit in the entire country. So Maryland averages more points as a starting unit than any other unit does in the entire country. So that includes a really talented team in Auburn. That includes a really good team in Duke. It includes a lot of really good teams. And when you look at it player for player, stat by stat, Maryland starting five, I really think you could say is potentially one of the best in the entire country. When you look at it, I just want to compare it to, let's look at Duke. Duke starting five, really talented. They got NBA guys. They got some really talented guys. But when you look at Duke starting five compared to Maryland starting five, Maryland's, I would say, has more balanced. They do a little bit more when you look at it. Like Cooper Flag, obviously, is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. He averages 20 points per game. And then Colin Knippel, their other guard, averages 13 points per game. Tyrese Proctor gets 12 points per game. But then after that, their James kid averages only 8. And then their center, Malua, if I'm saying his name right, averages 8 points per game. So right there, when you look at that compared to Maryland's starting 5, Duke has 2 guys averaging under 10 points in their starting 5. Where you look at Maryland, Derek Queen, 16 points per game. Jacoby Gillespie, 14. Julian Reese, nearly 14 points a game. Rodney Rice, who feels like he's dropping 18, 19, 20 every single game, 13.4 points per game. Selton Miguel, who's last on our starting 5 in scoring, 12 points per game. Like, that's pretty special thing to be able to do, where you have 5 guys that average double digits for Maryland. And that's not normal for a starting 5. You don't normally have 5 guys in your starting 5 that average double digits. And Maryland has that, and that's very rare. As well as when you look at the shooting splits, it's also really high level. Look at from the free throw line for our starting line. 76% from Derek Queen, 85% from Gillespie, 73% from Julian Reese, who struggled his entire career with that, 79% from Rodney Rice, 71% from Selton Miguel. When you look at from three-point arc, 41% from Gillespie, 37% from Rodney Rice, 44% from Selton Miguel. Everybody in your starting line, so 37% from 3 that takes threes. I'm not going to include Derek Queen because I feel like he shoots them every once in a while, but it's become more and more rare for Derek Queen to shoot threes. So there's everyone shooting well from the free throw line, everyone shooting well from the 3-point line. Look at the field goal percentage. 54% from Queen, 47% from Gillespie, 59% from Julian Reese, 45% from Rice, 44% from Selton Miguel. It's a really awesome starting 5 where you just don't know who's going off. And you have everything you need. You have 2 big men who I think arguably are the best 2 big man duo in the Big Ten. The Michigan guys, they're really talented and they have an argument as well. I'm not going to act like they don't. We'll be able to do it out with them, but I think Maryland and Michigan have the 2 best big man unit in the Big Ten, and I think we have 3 of the best all-around guard unit in the Big Ten as well. And when you put that together, you have an elite starting 5 that's really led us in every single game. And when you look at the pressure that we've had to put on these guys every single game, because we don't get much bench production, it's pretty amazing to look at how much pressure we put on the starting 5 to score, to be able to do things. When you look at it, like look at the last game against Iowa, a game where we put up 101 points. Guess how many points of those were from the bench guys? Only 6. 6 points from Jordan Geronimo off the bench. The rest of that 101 was from Maryland's starting 5. So it's really impressive to see that game in and game out, they are not getting any bench help. Look at the game against Nebraska, 83-75, a big win against Nebraska. Nobody off Maryland's bench scored a point. That's a ton of pressure on the Maryland starting 5. Let's go to the game against Rutgers. Let's see what that looks like. Another win for the Terps. The bench combined for 7 points in an 81-90 win for the Terps. Let's go one more game against Ohio State. Against Ohio State, Jalen Young was the only Terp off the bench to score 2 points in a loss for the Terps. So you get the theme. To me, the amount of pressure that goes on the starting 5 at Maryland isn't like any other team in the country. And that's why I think you have to give credit to this Maryland starting 5, because I don't think there's another unit that has been asked to put together the type of season that Maryland starting 5 is. We don't have much bench production. We don't have many guys that can come off the bench that can score. Like Duke, Auburn, like they got guys off the bench. Like Duke's got 5-star guys that might go to play 10 years in the NBA and are really talented guys. Like they have that luxury. They have, talk about a guy off the bench that I wish went to Maryland, Darren Harris for Duke. PVI guy that could be entering the portal next year, possibly. A guy that I would want Maryland to look at was a four-star, like a high-level four-star out of high school, doesn't even get time at Duke, doesn't get off the bench. And so when I look at it and you say the amount of pressure combined with them living up to that pressure, like it's not like we're like, oh, we wish if we had a good bench this year, we would have been a much better team, but instead we're just a mediocre Big Ten team. No, the starting five was like, forget that. We don't have a great bench. They're not going to do a ton for us, but we're going to put up 80 points. We're going to put up 90 points when we need to against Rutgers. We're going to put up 100 against Iowa if we need to, and we're going to do it on both sides of the floor. For a while, Maryland, I have to check again, but they were top 21 in both defensive and offensive statistics according to KenPom. And so when you really get into this unit and the 5 talented players that Maryland has, we can't take this for granted. This is a starting five that's not normal. It's probably not going to be nearly as I don't want to say nearly as good next year, but it's not going to be as good next year. And so you got to be excited if you're the Terps for what you have, because it's a really awesome unit. It's a really awesome starting five, and I'm really excited that the Terps have been able to make this, and that the Terps have a type of unit like this. Let's talk about Maryland football's visit day. They have a huge visit day coming up. What does it mean for the Terps? We'll talk about that next. This is a message from sponsor TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. So the Terps are going to have a huge visit day in June, where a ton of top 2026 prospects are going to visit, and it's going to be Maryland's biggest day for recruiting. Maybe in the Mike Locksley era, this might be the biggest recruiting day for the Terps, with the potential class that Maryland could sign in the 2026 class. It could be better than the 2025 class, which I've said I think is the best class Mike Locksley has had. But the Terps could sign an even better, an even higher level class. And my thing is, to be good in football, you got to sign back to back to back to back good classes in college football. You can't take your pedal off the metal. And you got to keep on working on getting top classes and getting good players and getting 4-star after 4-star. And that's not easy to do. And if you don't stack up good classes, it's just going to be like one good class isn't going to make a good team. Like, you got a bunch of guys on a team. You got a bunch of guys that are probably going to miss games. Like, there's so many different reasons why, but depth in football, having a lot of stacking together good classes is really important for the Terps to be able to do. And I think Mike Locksley can do that with this 2026 class. And some of these official visit days are being locked in and everything, and we're starting to see that some of the Terps are going to be visiting and things like that. And I think there's some really good players on the board that we need to, one, keep, and two, a couple guys that I really want to see the Terps be able to land. I will say this, it's going to be really tough because these 3 guys, each of them are really high-level players. They're 2 of the best players in the 2026 class. But you're just hoping that Maryland can make a really big push for them. We already know Zion Ely's committed, and of course he'll be coming to the official visit that he posted. But I've talked about Zion Ely. He's going to be tough to keep committed, man. He's going on these other official visits, and it's going to be tough. He's going to some really high-end places like Ohio State, like a Penn State, like an Auburn. Like he's going to some really cool spots, and it's going to be tough to keep Zion Ely committed. It just is based off of where he's at, based off of his profile, based off of how guys are going to are probably going to give him a really big money type of a money deal and NIL things to go along with that. It's going to be tough to get Zion Ely in the right spot. So or keep Zion Ely at Maryland, but I think him visiting along with some of these other guys that we really want is going to be really big for the Terps. We also know that Emmanuel is also visiting, who we really like, is definitely one of the top guys on our board. 5-star, not a 4-star, a legit 5-star, one of the best players in the 2026 class. He's tackle guard type of offensive lineman, not exactly what he'll do at the highest level, but he's a guy that we're really looking at, that we really want. 5-star rated as the number 5 ranked player nationally on 247. Also looks like Penn State's warm, Oregon's warm, Georgia's warm. And for me, if you can land another kid in the trenches like Emmanuel Iheanacho, I try to practice his name, like Emmanuel Iheanacho, that could be huge. The 5-star kid, and the big thing about Emmanuel Iheanacho, and the thing that we feel pretty good about, is he's a DMV kid. He's a Georgetown prep kid. He's going to be on that official visit, and we feel really awesome about him and what he can do. And I think Loxley, those are the 2 top guys on the board for Loxley, Zion Ely and Emmanuel Iheanacho. Zion Ely, I still kind of consider him uncommitted. I know he's technically committed, but it's still like you kind of got to go through the whole process with these guys before I'm like, yeah, he's ready, like he's committed, like he's going to be a Terp. But if you can land those 2 5-stars, it's going to be a ripple effect in that 2026 class, and more guys are going to want to come. So that's why I think it's so important. We're going to get those guys at the same spot. And hopefully there's a thing where it's like, let's stay home. Let's go to Maryland. Let's change this Maryland program around instead of let's all go to different places. Let's go to one of us go to Penn State, one of us go to Georgia, one of us go to Ohio State. Like, I hope that's not the case. And I think it's important that they're coming on the same official visit. And then Jaira Edwards, another kid I haven't talked about, 4-star safety, St. Francis, is another guy that we're really strongly looking at, that we really want. Another DMV guy, of course, going to St. Francis Academy, of course, 4-star, but like a really high-level 4-star, ranked as one of the top safeties in the class, 34th ranked nationally, 3rd in the state of Maryland. Another guy that we really want. It looks like Auburn, Georgia, Oregon, Tennessee is warm for him. So he's a guy that's going to be tough to be able to get. But we get him, like I talked about, we get everybody there at the same time. And I think these 3 guys are all top guys on our board. We want all 3 of these guys. If we end up with 2 out of 3, I'll be happy. If we end up with 1 out of 3, I'll probably still be happy. You just want to get these guys in the same building at the same time. And it's going to be exciting to see that all of them are going to come visit Maryland, and that they all have a chance to be the Terps. But I do think this official, and there's going to be plenty of other guys that come, but I do think this official could be the biggest visit day under Michael Loxley, because you don't want to have a one-class wonder. You guys know about singers or songwriters have one-hit wonders. You don't want to have one-hit wonder as a class where you sign one really good class, but after that it's like, it goes back to kind of just normal everyday class. The 2025 class was a top 25 class. I thought you signed a bunch of really important players, and you don't want to have that as a one-hit wonder. You want to combine and stack good classes like I talked about. And Mike Loxley has a chance to do this with this 2026 class. There's arguably more top-end talent from the DMV on the board, and the Terps are going to have the opportunity to land it. We'll see exactly how it goes down, but I'm excited to see what the Terps can do with it, and if the Terps can get a couple of these guys. But I think this visit day is going to be extremely important for that. Let's talk about Coach Brian Williams off. We'll talk about that next and what that means for the Terps. So So Coach Brian Williams is gone. Maryland defensive coordinator is gone to Jacksonville State, and I think this is news, surprising news for a lot of different people. I think that I didn't think that he would go to a place like no hate toward Jacksonville State, but I thought a lot of people thought Coach Williams would be uh, off to a big boy, maybe a big boy head coaching job after he was done at Maryland. He's not becoming the head coach at Jacksonville State. He's becoming the defensive coordinator. And I do think it's a meaningful loss for the Terps to lose Coach Williams. I think he had a really good stint with Maryland. I thought he did a really solid job. There's a point where our defense was improving every single year before last year, and we had put together really good defenses, and we've had some really good players on our defense over the last couple of years, and I felt like he was a good coordinator that put a lot of our guys in good spots, and he's done a really good job of developing a lot of good players, especially in the secondary. Like I think about Deontay Banks, I think about Dante Trader last year, I think about Bo Braid. The list goes on. There's so many. Jacorian Bennett, there's Tarheeb Still, who's making impact in the NFL, and those guys are proven to be playing at high level in the NFL. Of course, we'll see what happens with Dante and Bo. But I do, or Bo Braid still has, he's had a year under the belt in the NFL, but he's still working on getting on the field for the Ravens, made the 53 and everything. But this is more about Coach Williams. I do think he was a good defensive coordinator, and I thought he did a really good job at certain parts of our defense, but I do think certain parts of our defense were lacking. And I thought that it was sometimes tough. I thought that the defensive line and the pass rush was always lacking, while the secondary, besides last year, you would have some really good players back there. And you can't have everything. You're not going to have everything every single year. But I know he's moving on. I'm kind of surprised. There was a time where we thought he would be a head coach over the next couple of years. We thought he would become a head coach, but now he's taking the DC position at Jacksonville State. I don't know exactly why he kind of did this, because it's definitely a step down in terms of football. You go from the Big Ten, playing in arguably the best football conference in the league last year, to Jacksonville State, where you're not going to be playing at a Big Ten level. And I don't have any problem. There's obviously a reason for it, but I definitely think there's some things that we're probably not hearing about, as well as I don't hate that we kind of got two new coordinators this year and that we kind of get a fresh new start. I really don't hate that at all. I think it's kind of nice for the Terps to be able to restart, to be able to get two new coordinators. We'll see what happens at this DC position, but I think it's good for the Terps. I think last year kind of made us want to restart the clock a little bit. We still have all of our guys. We still have really talented players. We still have a really talented recruiting class in the 2025 class, not like guys like decommitted from – we had one decommit from 2026 class, but I'm not too worried about it. But I feel like kind of starting over and getting a new look at things isn't a bad thing for Mike Locksley under a couple new coordinators. And we'll see what happens with this DC position. Biggest thing for me, I just hope it's somebody that can recruit, somebody that's going to be able to get guys, because obviously we want to be able to keep Zion Ely. We want to be able to get this Jira Edwards kids. We want to get some other guys. So I'm hoping it's somebody that can recruit and do some of those things. But overall, I'm not too down on this. It's just a little surprising. It's kind of crazy how things can change. But that's sports. Things are going to change fast. And I think it's okay that this happened. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.